This is a shiur in Shiur Tanya. We're holding a present right at the end of Perek Daled and beginning Perek Hey, which the passages we're going to learn today are on page Tes of the printed Sefer, and today is Tuesday, Kof Beis Sivan Toshin Ayin Beis. Kof Beis Sivan Toshin Ayin Beis. All right, so we completed Perek Daled with the making clear, or the announcement almost on the part of the Alter Rebbe, that in Gan Eden or Elyon, in Mamish in Olam Habo, being the meaning in this particular context, Gan Eden, all one can experience there is the Olam HaSoga, meaning how the Nivra grasps something with his koyach. What can he possibly grasp? Albeit great things. It's true that Gan Eden is a tremendous level of Hasoga, albeit it's great things, but it's only Ziv Hashchina. It's only a radiation of the Shechina. Ve'ilu, the etzem of a Kodesh Baruch Hu himself, the Kveda Uba'atzmai, is Dafki, we are able to be toifes, we'll be able to grasp through keeping of Torah and mitzvahs, or to put it more precisely, through the learning of Torah and the carrying out of the mitzvahs. And therefore we see that the Alter Rebbe used two lashonos, that when you learn Torah and you keep mitzvahs, then we saw that the neshama is tafisa umislabeshes ba'kodesh baruch hu mamish. So we saw that tafisa was probably referring to the union of Torah. For tfisa is the idea of grasp, or grasping something. We're going to see more about that now in the coming Perek. Mislabeshes is more that the neshama enters a garment and a lavush which surrounds it. That's more the concept of a commandment something beyond you, and you bottle to, and you give yourself away to the keeping, and so you're, like we saw, you become enclosed in a lavush which surrounds you and envelops you from what we might call the rosh to the regal, from the highest point to the lowest point. But that's more shayt to the union of mitzvahs. However, since inside that Torah and inside those mitzvahs which you do are hidden HaKadosh Baruch Hu b'kveda uba'atzmai, or Raiso Kudsha Brichu Kul Echad, therefore you are teifes and you're mitlabesh in HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself, mamish, b'kveda uba'atzmai, in his very essence, different completely than what is possible in Olam Habo. And we said that we could possibly even suggest that it was even referring to Olam Habo in a more general and drastic sense of after coming of Mashiach and Tchias HaMeisim, but there will also be a very special Olam Habo, as is well known. Even then, the Ikar Avodah of the Neshama will be in the way described here in Gan Eden, but the type of union that we have with HaKadosh Baruch Hu b'kveda ba'atzmai in a mitzvah or in learning a piece of Torah in this world, we're never going to have again, as it were. That union is something that you have only down here, and you're given that unbelievable privilege for your time that you're here in this world. After that, it's of doubt as to whether one's really going to make it in that way, to use the expression evermore. Even though in the time of after Tchias HaMeisim, it's going to be very, very high Giluim. But whether it'll be teifes or mislavish, b'ha'atzmus, mamish, well, that is a thing to be considered. But anyway, even if it means in that broader sense, Olam Habo, then maybe that's also correct based on a mimer from the Rebbe Rashab, as I pointed out yesterday in Talk Reish Nun Dalet. However, so that was the general message towards the end of Perek Dalet. And then the Alter Rebbe asked a kasha, which he said that when you keep Torah and mitzvah and you're mislabish in the mitzvah or you're teifas, the Indian in learning Torah down here in this world, you're only teifas dvarim gashmiyim, and Elikus is something completely another entity in the most extreme way we can imagine than the dvarim taktonium v'gashmiyim. So how is it then that through that you can be described as being teifas, the very essence of a Kodesh Baruch Hu? So in a way we have to sort of really think deeply about that kasha, because after all we learned in the previous parts of the Perek that the Torah comes down into this world, and that's the ultimate purpose of the Torah, and that's the ultimate high expression of the Torah. For example, we have in the Gemara the story in Masechta Shabbos, in the Sugi of Matan Torah, where the Gemara tells the story that the Malachim, they asked to have the Torah given to them. Now, they didn't just mean the Torah as some sort of a intellectual plaything for them, chas v'shalom. I mean, they meant business. They meant also the union of the divinity of the Torah and the greatness of the Torah. And yet, nonetheless, the answer to them was that you guys are just not in it. You know, you're not in a world where you have a Yetzer Hara. You don't have a Gashmi Stika mother and father. You never went down to a Gashmi Stika Mitzrayim. You were never in the troubles of the Gashmi Stika world. So you can't really know what the Torah is. What from that we see, and it's apparent from what we learned here in the Alter Rebbe's L'Shemus in Perek Dalet, that's the Torah. The Torah, the way it is given Lamat, that's the Amitius and Emersa Torah. So what's the kasha that when I teifas the dvarim taktonium, I'm got up kasha. I mean, that's the Torah. That's the way the Torah was given. When you're teifas the dvarim taktonium, you're teifas the Torah. So we have to understand what is the kasha, and I think that maybe we could explain it just briefly before we go into Perek Hay. We could explain it that in a slightly different angle. Behind it, we've seen throughout this Perek that the Torah is be'emes a lavush to the nefesh elokis and to the koiches of the nefesh elokis. It's only a lavush, and it expresses itself in three levels of machshava, dibur, and ma'aseh, which are three states of lavushim, a garment. Now, a garment is only like the outer story, like the inner story, which is inside the garment. So that would tend to lead to the concept that Lamaila, also by Hashem, we could suggest that the Torah is also only a garment. It's not really, and just like we want to say that he's one with Torah, it's literally, as it were, the Abisham puts on a garment that he unites himself with it in the most ultimate way, albeit, but he puts on a garment. And we find there's a pasuk in Tehillim, Tehillim that we said yesterday in chapter Kuf Dalet, which is 21st day. Today's Kuf Beis. Is there it's written that Oita Oyer Kesalmo, the Abishah puts on light like a dress or like a garment, and that's referring to the Torah. Our sages say that's referring to the Torah. So the Abishah puts on the Torah like a garment. It kind of follows then that really what we experience when we experience the Torah, that's the way the Torah is meant to be given to us. Or the Torah is only really a garment. Yeah, and the purpose of that garment is for our purpose, since we're down here. And Hashem wanted a Gashmistic world for whatever reasons he may have wanted them, and so on. That's another question, which will also be dealt with in Tanya. He wanted Davki a Gashmistic. The way we can approach, as it were, his Rotten and his Chokhmah is if it comes in our terms, in a Gashmistic way, and that's the ultimate purpose of everything. Of that he's made the Torah like a garment for our purposes to get to a union with him. And therefore, ultimately, the union with him is the ultimate aim and the ultimate perfection of the whole thing. So the Alter Rebbe says, if you're uniting yourself with a lavush, you're not really uniting with the inner wearer of the levush, you're really only uniting with the levush. And if the Torah is only a levush, then where's HaKadosh Baruch Hu? So therefore the Rebbe points out that by uniting yourself with the levush, you anyway unite yourself with he who is inside it. And therefore he brings the mashal of the melech, that if you embrace the melech, it doesn't matter how many clothes the melech may be wearing, but you're embracing the whole etzem of the melech. So the same way with the Torah, even though the Torah's function, and in a way it's very binyan, its essence is in the form of a garment on a levush, but it has to be aware of the garment. The garment is not just hanging in a wardrobe or dangling on a stick or something. It's being worn by a Kodesh Baruch Hu. It's his garment, as it were. And on the contrary, very much so. So when you take the garment, you take him. And that's what, even though the garment appears to be very, very separate, like it is in effect when we put on a garment, it's not really ourselves, it seems to be very separate from our Kodesh Baruch Hu. It's just brought him tatoinim, says the alternative, no, that's not Beklal Kasha. That has nothing to do with it, because when you take those dvarim tatoinim, then you take HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that's me. And then he added, by way of a completion to the mashal, that there's like two functions here. There's like how you embrace the king, and then there's a further aspect how the king embraces you. And we try to point out that it was like two levels or stages in the way of our keeping our mitzvah. First of all, we devote ourselves to the mitzvah, and then, as it were, HaKadosh Baruch Hu embraces us. We try in some way to form the union with him, and then he completes the union by embracing us. And that's the pasuk in Shiur Tanya. Yeminoi chabkeni. HaKadosh Baruch Hu's yemin embraces me, and that's like an extra finality in the union. There is something similar that we're going to see here in Perek Hay, and maybe we can find a parallel between that doubleness of the mashal with how the Alter Rebbe going to explain what we're about to approach in Perek Hay. Al Kol Panim, we see that the Alter Rebbe does double the mashal, and he stresses that the Torah is chesed umayim, and chesed umayim is this concept that we saw. Ma'amayim yordim mimochim gavoya lamochim nomoch. The whole etzem Torah, k'moishu ulamayla, comes down lamata bilti change, bilti shinoi. And remember, that's the idea of chesed umayim. It's not just stomach chesed which wears out on the way down. It's a chesed which becomes more perfect as it goes down, because the whole lot comes down to the bottom. And therefore he says it's chesed umayim, both of them which indicate chesed, by the way. But the mayim stresses and heightens the mashal of the word chesed, which is hidden in the word chesed. So that's what we could just add to what we finalized yesterday in Perek Daled. And now we begin Shiur Tanya Perek Hay, which is one of the really demanding prokim in Tanya, by the way. I mean, I'd probably say that about every perek when we start to, that happens to be the case. So, what do we see? We see that when you learn Torah particularly, and it would appear that's what we're going to pay attention to now more for the time being, then and even maybe we're differentiating between Torah and mitzvahs in that regard. But when you learn Torah, we use the word tfisa. You grasp and you hold on. So, the simple reader, when he reads that, what does it mean I grasp, I hold on, If you say I understand, masig, then, that's a spiritual sort of identity also, in a way, to gain something, to reach it and to grasp it in a way. Or to be toifes something, to grasp hold of it, as almost, to use the expression, to catch it, to hold, in a way of holding it firm. Tfisa, what sort of expression is that in the realm of the spiritual? When I learn Torah, I grab hold of things. I mean, what exactly does that imply? What's the word tfisa all about? And we see that we've already used it at least twice in the Hemshech of Perek Daled, and it's not we made up that lashon. It's not that the Alter Rebbe produced us a mashal with the word tfisa, nor somebody very important used that expression. Do you know who that was? It was Eliyahu Hanavi himself, because that's right at the beginning of Posach Eliyahu, we say that on Friday, but that's the beginning of the Tikkun Zohar. That's the beginning of the Sefer Tikkun Zohar. And we say that every Friday. We say a whole quote from that post. Right at the beginning of that quote, which is the beginning of the Tikkun Zohar, or the Hakdama to the Tikkun Zohar, that's where that expression occurs. So the Alter Rebbe is he's going to stress to us that it's Eliyahu Hanavi who used that expression. If Eliyahu Hanavi used that expression, there must be something tremendously exact, and there must be hidden profundity in that idea to the extreme, and that there must be some very powerful message in this concept of tfisa. That when you learn a inyan in Torah, you, as it were, grab HaKadosh Baruch Hu, mamish, and you grasp him. Because why? Because you grasp the etzem concept in a very, very profound way of grasping it, mamish, and holding it powerfully. And since inside that is a Kodesh Baruch Hu, then you grasp him. And that's what he begins with now, a whole explanation when they get to that concept. And that's what he now says, Ula Teisefes Biur, for an extra explanation. Now, why would I need an extra explanation? Because something about it is puzzling. What's this whole concept of grasping something in Ruchnias to the concept of the word tfisa, which means like to grasp it and hold it, and hold it firmly. You litfay somebody means like to almost hold him back, not let him move. And what is that? How does that have a reference to the spiritual matters that we're talking about here, and particularly HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself? So therefore he says, the Tosef is beer, which I know you need. Says you need that extra explanation. Ba'eir heitev. I'm not only going to give you an explanation, I'm going to do it very well. I'm going to make it very explicable. Ba'eir heitev. Very well explained. The Lashon, the expression tfisa, grasping and holding back and holding on to strongly. Sha'oma Eliyahu. The Alter Rebbe stresses that wasn't anybody who said that. It was Eliyahu Hanavi, which tends, like we pointed out, indicates that there must be, almost untenable or unfindable profundity hidden in that. Therefore, at least we need to do the best we can in a way of ba'er heitev, of good explanation and well developed, explicable explanation to try and grasp that concept of tefisa sha'omer Eliyahu. Where did he say it? Because he says right at the beginning of the Tikkun Zohar, leis machashova tefisa boch. Yeah, that no machshova, no act of the brain, no power of brain can ever grasp you. Yeah, tefisa boch. Boch meaning in Hashem, in his essence. Boch means talking directly to Hashem. Leis machshova tefisa boch. Nobody can ever grasp you. So we see that he used the word grasp. Now, even though he said that in the negative Eliyahu, he was talking about the greatness of Hashem in a way that he was telling us that the highest levels of brain powers, even as they are on the part of the Malachim and others, trying to grasp, they have no ability to grasp Boch in your essence. In other levels, which in the Stalchers or Ilmas in lower levels, maybe they can, or at least they can get close to it. Of it in Boch, there's no way. What that would tend to indicate that what we've been saying, however, that through Torah and mitzvahs you can make a direct connection with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It would seem that we can, but through Torah and through learning Torah in this concept particularly, we do and we are able to be teifus Bach in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's what we said. So the Alter Rebbe says we have to explain what Eliyahu told us in the negative. Yeah, but he is through that he is hinting that in the positive. That's what the Alter Rebbe did for us in Perek David. He developed on that hint that in the positive you are, if you do it the right way. What is the right way? By learning Torah, then you grasp HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Boch. You do grasp Boch, and you hold him on, and you grasp him and hold him on. So how is that shining? How is that possible? So therefore, in order to make that ba'eir heitev, in order to make it well understood, the Alter Rebbe is going to have to tell us how your seichel and your power of reasoning how they relate to a concept when you study them. Because that's what we do when we learn Torah. We learn the concepts and the messages of the Torah, and our mind and our seichel, which is under the general heading of the word machshava here, relates to those concepts. So says the Alter, let's see how they relate to a concept, and then we'll see how that applies to a concept in Torah, yeah? And that will imply that however my seichel relates to a concept in Torah, hidden inside the Torah, we've said already, as a Kodesh Baruch Hu b'chvedu v'atzmai, is that will indicate how I'm able, as it were, to have a grasp in him through having a grasp in the Torah. In other words, I can't grasp a Kodesh Baruch Hu, like we just pointed out. I have to grasp him through a lavush. What is the lavush? Torah. How do I grasp Torah in such a way that through that I'll be grasping automatically a Kodesh Baruch Hu? That's what we're setting ourselves now to try and work at. Hine kol seichel, any reasoning power. Seichel is the name for the koach of reasoning given to every man. So he says, kol seichel, k'shamaskil u'masig b'sichloi, eze muskal, harei ha-seichel toifes es ha-muskal, u'makifoi b'sichloi. He said, when you as a seichel, you're using your brain power in your reasoning, when you are maskil, now maskil means when you begin the understanding of a concept. When the concept shines into your mind and becomes known and aware to you at the beginning, that's called maskil. Umasig means a further development that you grasp in a spiritual way, and you begin to form a grasped idea of what the message and what the concept is there. We've already had hasoga. Masig is the verb of hasoga. Hasoga is the noun, masig is the verb. So he said, when your mind first makes its first appearance of the idea, and it grasps it as it goes along, besichloi, yeah, what does he grasp? Eze muskal, any given concept. Now the word muskal, we need to just sort of go into it here. Maskil is the how do you call it? The causatory form of the word. Maskil, you make your seichel work. Maskil, you make your seichel approach something. In other words, you promote it and bring it down the first time. Koyach ha-maskil, it's called instead. And then there's a union of muskal. Muskal is already a noun. Maskil is a verb. Muskal is a noun. Muskal means a concept, a grasp thing, something which is being worked at. How do you call it? A spiritual idea or concept is called a muskal. Masig is another verb. Masig meaning to grasp or to gain your appreciation of it. So therefore he says like this: when your seichel produces first and grasps inside its power of reasoning, inside its seichel, eze muskal, any given idea or concept which is being understood, harei ha-seichel teifes es ha-muskal. He said, what does your seichel do? It tries to grab hold of the muskal. Yeah, here's this idea being presented to you. You've never heard it before. You didn't know about it before. You now are trying to grasp that. So what your seichel, your reasoning power, literally grasps hold of that. And how do you call it? He said that Teifes says it grasps it, umakifoi besikloi, and he surrounds it. Makifoi is the word makif can be a noun or it can be also a verb. Makifoi means he surrounds it. This is the verbatory form. Sometimes makif can be a noun, or makif can mean a light, a transcendent light. But here it means a concept of him surrounding it, basically. Now what does that mean? When you try to grasp an idea, what your seichel does is that it takes hold of that idea and literally takes hold of it, grasps it, and is makif it, envelops it in a certain way, because it hasn't really finalized yet the whole process of understanding. It's only in the act and the beginning of understanding it, so then it grasps it. Now, one of the reasons why we can call it grasping, one of the essential things that when you get a muskal is you have to be very careful to define the muskal, and many aspects of that defining the muskal are being careful to not mix it and to not confuse it or equate it with other muskalim, but to define clearly what you are talking about and what Indian you're talking about to yourself. So therefore, you grasp hold of it to know what you've got, and you makif it, you surround it with your mind, so that you, as it were, make limited and boundaried in your mind what you are talking about. And it doesn't just be a liquid thing that sort of can run around your mind and relate to all sorts of things which are maybe irrelevant, but you, as it were, you fix it and you define it. That sort of ability of a fixationary definition, whatever I would call makif b'sikloi. So that's what happens. When you're starting to understand an idea, your seichel becomes active in producing that seichel, trying to grasp it, but by way of protecting it and limiting it and making clear what it is. Yeah, and that's an act of surrounding it in your seichel. So the Rebbe says, now he adds a very amazing thing. He said, "V'amuskal nitfas u'mukaf u'mulubash b'toich ha'seichel." And he said, and that idea is grasped, it is surrounded transcendently, and it's malubash, it's enclosed, bitoich, within your seichel. Which seichel is that? In the ha-seichel, meaning your seichel, shehisigoi v'hiskiloi, which has grasped and has understood it. So that looks almost like a double expression. The Alter Rebbe said that you surround the seichel and you, as it were, enclose it in your mind. And he said, and the seichel, the muskal, is grasped and surrounded and enclosed inside your seichel when you grasp it and when you grasp it and appreciate it. So I mean, that's like a double expression. It's like just saying the other way around the same thing. So we have to say that we can't allow that to happen in Tanya. Then we have to say that something is being added here by that apparently double expression which occurs like in the middle here. And so what I can suggest is like this. That when you first approach a seichel, is where did the seichel come from? Your mind, as it were, produces it. Hiskiloi or maskiloi. Maskiloi means to produce it at the beginning. Like we said, the word maskil, because you're maskil, it produces it. So maybe that's referring to the general idea of Chokhmah. Because that's what happens. That's the Koach HaChokhmah Sivan. So that's a tremendously profound act on our part to produce a new idea and to see a new light which has occurred to us. But on the other hand, it's a very general, it's not yet well-defined thing. So in the lower levels of Chokhmah, there's already an attempt to pass it in to the field of Bina. The Bina will deal more with it, and there'll be more the concept of grasping it, masi. So maybe what he could suggest we should say is that the Alter Rebbe hints at, first of all, there's a idea of maskil, and then you pass it on into your Bina to a deeper level, not deeper, but a more broader territory within your mind, and that's this in a masi. Yeah? So then what you do is you've grasped it, and you, as it were, in some way or another, limited it, made it clear, because you put it into the field of grasping. So you've, as it were, you've made clear what it is, and you've, as it were, protected it from other influences, and you're making clear what it is. So then the Alter Rebbe says, once Bina gets hold of it, then Bina, as it were, develops and broadens, and as it were, deepens your relationship as a person with that muskal. Therefore, he said that muskal is nitfas, it's grasped, and it's mukaf, it's well surrounded, and it's also malubash. It's enclosed with, he didn't use in the first line the word malubash. When he was describing the first thing, he didn't say the word malubash. Malubash means to be enclosed, right? It comes that the concept now has been grasped, it's been surrounded, and it's also been, as it were, like put in and malubish into your seichel, but which suggests that that's a further development. That after you see it as a bright idea in Chokhmah, and you move towards grasping it, you pass it into a new realm. There it becomes mamish surrounded by your power of reasoning. It becomes grasped by it, and it becomes, as it were, enclosed in it, which means that your seichel now enclosed the seichel, which means that you grasped it well, and that's what he adds. It's then malubish b'toich ha'seichel shihisigoi v'hiskilo. He's now, as it were, he's finished the full act, and he's grasped what he originally understood. He's grasped what he originally produced. It was originally, and that's been, which means that once you grasp something in Bina, you also, as it were, finalize what was the first thing. And therefore he mentions that you're also muscular, not just muscular, but you are muscular. Oh, so that would explain well the two nuances here, which look to be like a doubling up, and therefore there's an addition and a slightly stronger language in the second one, because that's talking about the act of actually grasping it in the koyach habina. That's what we could do. And now the Alter Rebbe goes and he adds a whole new dimension to it. He said, "V'gam ha-seichel, your seichel, yeah, ha-seichel meaning your power of reasoning, v'gam ha-seichel melubish ba-muskal." He said, this is a different idea. Your seichel is surrounded by the muskal, by the idea. First way around we were saying you surround the idea. Now he's saying the truth of the matter is that the seichel surrounds the muskal, the idea surrounds your seichel also. He said, Gama seichel melubash is enclosed, ba muskal, inside the idea, b'shah shemasigei b'toivsoi, at the time that he's working at appreciating and grasping it in his seichel. Which would tend to imply that maybe when he finishes with the whole thing, then he can't maybe say that so much. But when you're working hard at it, then you can say that. And what does that mean? That dafki, because you're working hard at the seichel, well, that implies that you haven't finally understood it yet. Which means that there's a certain trace and an aspect of the seichel which is over and above you. There's a inyan that the seichel is just like you are being makiv the seichel with your mind, then the seichel is being